All right, folks, we're back here on WLTH 1370M. That's 92.7 in the FM dial. It is 7:45 in the PM here on February the 27th, 2026. And before we go to our last segment, we got to get out of here in case Dr. Williams decides to come in with the 2x4 and starts regulating like Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Let me get this call real quick. Hello, caller, make it quick. What's up?
Yeah, man, I just called to commend you on your show on drugs there, man. You know, that's my thing, man. Yeah, I didn't know you had to tighten up, man. This is the only phone call you had, man. It's like they put you on janitorial duties there, man. I just wanted to say this, yeah, you know, because I think I'm your only call, man. You know, you be out there in the crickets, but listen.
Yes.
You know, there was one president that used drugs. You know who he was?
Who, Bill Clinton?
No, man, let's be real. They still Bill Clinton. No, man. No. You can't figure that one out. It was Ulysses S. Grant. You know, he had throat cancer. Toward the end of his presidency, he used cocaine for the pain of his throat. That's the only president, man, that ever used drugs, man. And I'm glad, man, that you put that out there about drugs, man. You know, the cartel, and that's what really took down Gary, man. Gary was once a small metropolis headed toward being a big metropolis. Hey, man, you have a good night, man.
You too. You too.
Thank you. Up around there, man.
Thank you for your call, brother. Thank you for your call. Well, folks, it is the end of Black History Month. Tomorrow is the last day, and this is the last show. So I wanted to, before the month ends, shine a light on a lesser known elements of Black history that so many people don't know. Not just the good stuff. A lot of times history is messy and it's ugly. And one of the messiest and ugliest parts of Black History Month has been America's medical history, our history in the medical system. It's unfortunate that we have to learn about these types of things from radio shows because we don't learn these things in school, but, you know, it is what it is. A lot of these people were sacrificed at the altar of white supremacy, and these people's sacrifices are often forgotten, and they've often been dismissed. Their legacies reflect the depravity of a racist society that rendered them an insignificant and unimportant part of the story of America. And so today we remember and honor those who were used and abused and discarded by our racist healthcare system. A big shout out to our friends over at African Archives on Twitter. You guys should look them up. Today we paid tribute to the more than 8,000 post-Civil War Black women in Mississippi and South Carolina who were given involuntary hysterectomies, meaning having their entire uterus removed between the 1920s and the 1980s. Yes, the 1980s. I could have been alive while some of this was going on. When they went to see white doctors for other complaints. These came to be known as Mississippi appendectomies. The Mississippi appendectomy was the medical practice that provided involuntary sterilization to poor Black women who were deemed unfit. They were deemed unfit to reproduce. These practices were not just limited to Mississippi. An estimated 100,000 to 150,000 poor people were sterilized annually. And if that doesn't make your skin crawl enough, wait till you learn about the father of gynecology, a man named J. Marion Sims, who was known for his experiments on enslaved Black women in Alabama, where they were often submitted as guinea pigs by their plantation owners who could not use them for their own sexual pleasure. That is horrific. So J. Marion Sims would purchase Black women slaves. He would use them as guinea pigs for his untested surgical experiments. He repeatedly performed genital surgery on these Black women without anesthesia because, according to him, Black women didn't feel pain. Anarcha, who was one of those women, was an African-American slave woman who was forced to regularly undergo surgical experiments while positioned on his table, squatting on all fours and fully awake without any comfort of anesthesia. It is calculated that Anarcha was operated on roughly 34 times between 1845 and 1849. That's in just four years. These operations helped Dr. Sims hone his technique and create his gynecological tools. But we're not stopping there. In the 1800s, Dr. Francois Marie Prevost, who was the father of the cesarean section, tried to perfect cesarean sections using African women as subjects. His first successful birth, named Césarine, was born in 1831 to a slave woman. Experiments were not limited to the living. There were night doctors who dug up the corpses of the enslaved for medical inquiries and experimentation. Ooh. But that's not all. Between 1963 and 1971, in Oregon state penitentiaries, black prisoners were injected with radioactive compound called thymidine in their testicles. Yes. So if you thought that they were just doing experiments on black women in this country, and that was a long time ago, this was in the 60s and early 70s, and they were doing this to black men. The experiment was to test the effects of radiation on the cells of the testes and doses of radiation that would produce changes or induce damage in the cells, the amount of time it would take for cell production to recover, and the effects of radiation on hormone excretion. At the time of the Oregon experiment, using prisoners as research subjects was an accepted practice in the United States. In this particular study, it was interpreted by state officials as permitting an inmate to give his consent to a vasectomy, consenting to become an experimental subject. But that's not all, folks. In 1945, after a nasty accident, a black truck driver named Eb Cade was secretly injected with plutonium, literal plutonium, that they make nuclear bombs with. They injected this man with plutonium to see the effects of a nuclear bomb on the body. The researchers went on to experiment on 18 other individuals. For 6 months, he was held in a hospital thinking he was being treated for his injuries. During the time, he was injected more than 40 times the amount of plutonium an average person is exposed to in a lifetime. The researchers collected bone samples and extracted 15 teeth to monitor the effects of his exposure. Eb Cade grew suspicious of his broken bone treatments and escaped from the hospital. He died of heart failure 8 years later at the age of 61. And finally, last but not least, this one was in the 1990s. Good God. Good God. In the 1990s, medical researchers gave a banned diet drug, fenfluramine, to dozens of black and Hispanic young men between the ages of 6 and 10 to see whether or not the drug could help predict if the boys were likely to become criminals as adults. Wow. Wow. So a lot of those boys are probably walking around here today. Man, that is awful. Like I said, black history isn't just the history of black people, it's the history of America. When you see what America has been willing to do to black people in the name of capitalism, in the name of science, in the name of religion, in the name of, freedom and everything else, you will see that white supremacy itself is an illness. It is a disease. It is a mental disease. And, we've got that, person who is currently in the White House who is doing his best to stoke the flames of white supremacy once again for his own personal game. Like I said, you know, me personally, I think Trump is a con artist above all else. But I absolutely think it's despicable the way that he's willing to use white supremacy or anything else to gain power, to distract from his own criminality and the criminality of his friends. But it isn't a new playbook. It's what America's always been about since we've been here 400 years. And so, like so many others from so many generations have fought white supremacy and fought racism and classism, we continue to fight in the 21st century, and our descendants will fight it probably in the 22nd century until it's dead and gone. Much respect to all those who were sacrificed in the name of white supremacy in the medical system and every other system in this country, the legal system, the educational system, and the financial system and everything else.